As I've evolved from my humble beginnings, I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of rooms. The more people I've met, the more stories I've learned. Stories of passion, trauma, triumph, and resilience. These are the stories that inspire us, that remind us of the human spirit. We can all learn from the untold stories in each of us, regardless of where you come from. And now, I'm excited to share these stories with you. This is EPEC Conversations. Welcome, everybody. You are tuning in to EPEC Conversations, where we tell human stories of trauma, triumph, and resilience. I'm your host, Delrisha White, and today we have a very serious topic. And I'm sitting here, I'm smiling because I'm so happy to see Antigua Maberson Hemingway now. I knew her.
I was married now.
He's married now. We went to Bennett together in undergrad in Greensboro, North Carolina. And so I've been following Antigua on her journey as she has shared a lot very publicly about child loss. A lot of conversations are coming up now about Black maternal health and infant mortality, and all the issues and complications that surround a Black birthing body. And so I am so happy to have you here because, again, over the years, as you've shared just different pregnancies and experiences with pregnancy, I feel like I've learned a lot. And we've had the opportunity to talk, but I want to just give you the platform to just inform us, to share your story, to let other mothers who might be experiencing what your body has experienced and what child loss is, and the other mothers who have experienced child loss and other parents who have experienced child loss in general. I want us to get a window into your life so that we can learn how to support those individuals in our lives, but also so that people know that they're not alone. And that there's nothing wrong with them. Mm-hmm. So that's what this episode is really about. So we're going to talk with Antigua about her experience. And I see your name is Monique. Should I be calling you Monique?
Whichever you comfortable with. I answered to hey you if you call me that. Okay. So I'm, my family and everything, Monique or Moosey. So in the professional realm, Antigua, so whatever, you my sister, so whatever you feel comfortable with.
Okay, well your name is Monique on here, so we're gonna call you Monique. Okay. The Bennett Bells no my good sis Monique as Antigua, but we gonna this is real casual. There's nothing formal about this. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and just get started. Yes. So I'm smiling, but I know that this is not really a happy topic. And so I want you to maybe just give us a little glimpse into what your first pregnancy was like and just kind of give us an overview. I know it's a lot to capture in an overview, but just to give the listener just a view of what you have experienced going through pregnancy as a first-time mother.
Well, I want to start by giving a disclaimer. A lot of people, when I do tell my story about my history with child loss, sometimes I am emotional and sometimes I am not. And I don't want my not boo-hooing and crying over the place to be alarming in the sense that I am a resilient person, first and foremost. I do have a strong faith foundation. And because of that, that's what gives me the strength to tell my story today. So first, I want women to know to not be ashamed of telling your story, and do not be ashamed of how you coped or learning to cope with your emotions. And so that is first and foremost. I don't want anybody to think that I'm heartless because
I love that. That's important.
I'm not. And a lot of people need permission to be strong.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that disclaimer. I was saying, I think that that's really important to say that up front for anybody who might be listening. And this is a serious trigger alert too. Right?
Yes.
So we want to make sure we just pause and say that as well. Yes. This is a trigger alert. We're talking about maternal health. We're talking about Black women's health. We're talking about Black women's bodies and the resilience of our bodies. And we're talking about child loss. And it's a very serious topic. So take your time with this episode. Take your time with the story. But also just be prepared to listen to it. Like make sure that you're in the space where you can do that. So that said, I'm gonna go ahead and just turn it over to you.
Okay, and dump in popcorn whenever you you feel need. But in 2015, my husband and I got married. We found out the following year that we were pregnant with our first baby. I made it to 18 weeks, and my water broke, and that was very much unexpected. And so I was taken out of work, and of course, visits to the hospitals. At that point, there was nothing that they could do to stop the leaking. They did encourage me to drink fluids because the more fluids I drink, the more the baby would urinate, and more that he would create the fluid within the amniotic sac. And so that's what I did. Just drinking, drinking, drinking. However, I went into labor at 21 weeks and delivered, and I delivered at home. Actually, I kept having contractions, and I kept going back to hospital. At this time, I was in Greensboro, North Carolina, under the Treatment of Women's Hospital, and so I was going back and forth for 3 days in labor. And I'm like, hey, I'm in labor. And when I got to the hospital, the contractions would stop. And so there's a thing where a woman's body can go into labor, and when you change the atmosphere, it disrupts the process and her contractions will stop. And so because of that, they didn't realize that, okay, yeah, this is happening. So I was not kept. I had the baby at home. I thought I had to use the restroom, and he was breech.
So let me just get this straight though. So you were laboring at home, and then you went to the hospital because you're like, the baby is coming. But when you got to the hospital, your body just basically paused on labor, essentially. Yeah. So it was difficult for them to evaluate if you were actually laboring or if this was just like Braxton Hicks or something like that.
Right. Okay. But being that I wish that it could have been taken more serious because of the fact that my water had broken and I was actively leaking. From 18 to 21 weeks and having these contractions. And so because I was actively leaking, there was actually really no real salvageable chance of me keeping him. So I wish that I would have been able to be kept and possibly, not have had him at home, because that creates a trauma environment. Where you associate pain with places. And so when I came home from the hospital, I didn't want to go into the restroom. Like, I held the bathroom the first time because I did not want to go into the bathroom where he was delivered. But on the night that he was born, he was stillborn. And Officer Dixon, EMT Dixon, I will never forget her. She tried to do CPR resuscitation on him on the bathroom floor. And in spite of him being so small, what a lot of people don't know is if a baby, what they tell us is that if a baby is not past a certain age, 24 weeks, that they're not vital. However, it wasn't until later on in my fight that I started looking on the internet and, realizing that there are some babies that have survived that are younger than 24 weeks. But what they had impressed on me was the quality of life that the child could possibly have should you try extreme measures to keep them alive at that.
So it's like a fear tactic to make you feel bad about keeping the baby.
I felt that way. And there was a lot of anger because I was sitting over here. I'm learning terms online like micro preemie, but a lot of these terms and videos that I was watching was from different places, Canada, different countries where the birth mortality rate is ridiculously low. And it's because of the health treatment that the women do receive in different countries. And so, I'm bringing this to their, acknowledgement. I've seen these things, these videos, these live accounts where people have documented their journeys where they have delivered before 24 weeks and their children have been born. And so, I want to fight. However, in this situation, our first pregnancy, my son was stillborn. And so that was a hard battle to face, but that knowledge I was able to gain in my future pregnancies afterwards.
So Monique and I had a pre-conversation before this conversation. And really, a lot of it was just catching up because it had been so long since we had connected. But the story of how you came to realize your body was laboring and what that process was for you, and how you had to really not only tend to your body but also think about long-term planning, and also think about what you needed in that moment. Like, your mind was actually in a lot of places while you were birthing prematurely. And so I want you, if it's not too triggering for you, to take us back to that moment and describe to somebody who has never experienced what that moment is, what it's like being surprised by the fact that your water is broken and now you're actually laboring. What was that like for you?
Well, when my water broke initially, we were having a family gathering and everything was fine. I had no concerns prior to that there were going to be any issues. My body wasn't showing any signs that I would be high risk or anything. No, I've always been a big girl, but even more so, I was told before my pregnancy that because I was diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And because
what does
of
that
that,
mean for people who don't know what PCOS is?
so polycystic ovarian syndrome is a diagnosis that a lot of women have that do not know it, that causes infertility issues. And that's one of the symptoms of PCOS. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is when a woman can form a lot of cysts on her ovaries, your pus filled or liquid filled abscess, and that either rupture on their own or they can disperse, if you will, very slowly, increase in all kinds of sizes, be multiple can be found at one time. And with that diagnosis, you also have people who are insulin resistant, who are prone to diabetes. People who are like myself, I am now considered a type 2 diabetic. Okay. And so, but diabetes is reversible. It is reversible. I have done it once before, but one thing I didn't know is also that pregnancy can bring on diabetes. I had no idea. And so I didn't experience gestational diabetes or type 2 diabetes with my first pregnancy. Also, it could cause women to have facial hair. I have battles with that. It does a lot of things. It makes it hard for women to lose weight. You can definitely start to do something and your body's responding, and then you just hit this plateau where nothing is working. But for me, fertility wise, I was told that I would not be able to have children because of the polycystic ovarian syndrome. So when I come to the point where I'm 18 weeks and my water breaks, and I'm like, this is not supposed to be happening. One, because it's a miracle to me.
You know, you're supposed to be pregnant, right?
Right. This is not supposed to be happening. So I'm standing there, and I remember I had on this yellow sundress, and just in the hallway, walking up the hallway, and I just this water just sounds out of nowhere, and my legs are covered. It's just wet everywhere, and I'm like, what in the world? And so we make it to the hospital, and when I tell you, I was not the nicest person. I was not. The woman who greeted me at the door was pregnant. She was a nurse, and I had to ask for forgiveness for this many a time. But she met us with the wheelchair to help get me situated, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, how are you?" And because of where my mindset was, I'm looking at this woman. You're happy, you're smiling, you're healthy, you're pregnant. And here I am, my water's breaking, and I'm about to lose my miracle. And and I'm looking at her like I'm trying not to have a baby. I mean, it was just every kind of emotion, and I'm thankful for her understanding and her compassion and her patience in that moment, because she understood that this is irregular. No, you're 15 weeks. This is not supposed to be happening. So they got me to a place where they were able to verify that it was in fact amniotic fluid, because there are some women that can have large gushes of water and actually be urine, because we do lose strength in our bladders, carrying that weight from the child. And so sometimes, yeah, you might want to wear the pin once that baby start getting some weight or some of
Right,
the.
this is the other side of pregnancy people don't
Oh,
talk
they
about.
don't tell you about it. They
Right,
don't. They don't tell you about it. Those extra large overnights are gonna be your daytime friend.
right, right.
With them always with the wings. I'm telling you, every time you giggle, sneeze, you tickle, you got a pickle. It's something gonna happen. It's going
Exactly.
down.
Exactly.
So I'm sitting there and I'm in the hospital. The staff starts surrounding. And again, this is, at the beginning of the experience actually happening. And so they got my body to calm down. They did identify that it was amniotic fluid. So at that time, I'm like, okay, well, am I about to have my baby? Can y'all save my baby? So the fact that they sent me home and put me on bed rest, because I was working as a CNA at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I got assistance at work as well. So I wasn't in a situation where I was doing a lot of heavy lifting or a lot of bending. If I had a patient that consisted of that, they would switch me out with somebody else so that it wouldn't be hard on my body. And that was the generosity of my coworkers and my boss at the time, because everybody does not get that.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that too. We'll talk
Yeah.
about that.
Oh
But
yeah.
yes, it's
Oh,
important.
stick a pin in that one. Stick a pin in that one. But because I've experienced all sides of it.
Right.
But so to go fast forward, so they send me home and they tell me again to drink all the fluids that I possibly can, to increase the baby to urinate, to increase the fluid in the amniotic sac, to help. We're trying to get me to 24 weeks. Get me there.
And
And
at this time, you were how far along?
at this 18 weeks,
You
and
were 18
so
weeks.
this is the journey between the 18 to the 21.
Okay.
So I'm on bed rest at home, drinking fluids. I only was able to get up to use the bathroom and to wash. That's the only time that I could get up. And so I'm like, okay, Lord, we gonna figure this thing out. So that's when I turned to the internet. What can I do? What is known about this? I've seen videos about women who had their membrane broken, and lost large amount of water, but were able to carry. And so, for those who know me, I am a licensed minister. I have been licensed for 3 years now. And so, but this was before my licensing, but my faith was already there. And so I started to pray that, okay, Lord, I need you to heal this. I need you to work this thing out. And so my focus was on healing. My focus was on winning. And that's what kept me grounded, because I was determined that this was going to work. And because it didn't, it doesn't, that goes back to my faith also. I know what the outcome was, but there was something else. My son's life wasn't in vain. And so I try to count every moment to make that count. And so as I look back and I'm drinking that water, mixing apple juice with water, anything I could to tolerate to get those fluids down. One day I was getting up to go use the bathroom and a contraction hit. And it about dropped me to the floor. And I said, Lord, this ain't it. This ain't it. We working on it. We getting there. He's been actively moving. This whole time, he's fighting, I'm fighting, we fighting to get here. And so, I'm doing what they're telling me to. So the contractions hit. This was on a Wednesday, I believe. So I went to the hospital and the contraction stopped. And they put me on monitors. They're like, it looks like everything, is okay. We're just going to have to send you back home because there's pretty much nothing that they could do. So I'm like, okay. Went back home, got comfortable. The next day, the contractions happened again. I'm back at the hospital. What I'm feeling is not fake. Then these are not Braxton Hicks, because my water is already broken and I'm still actively leaking. So again, the contraction stopped. There's nothing that they can do. They sent me back home. Third day, the contractions hit. I went back to the hospital. Some of the same nurses was there, and it was like, we don't know, pretty much, what this is. So at least that's what I was getting. So I feel like, in a sense, it was they kind of knew what possibly could happen, and just wanted me to be comfortable in the process, and you're more comfortable in your personal space. And so
So you think that they knew that you actually couldn't keep this baby?
I really do. Looking back in hindsight, I really do. I think they were just trying to comfort measures at that time.
Okay.
Comfort measures. And so I get home that third night, and I went to use the bathroom, and I thought that I had to have a bowel movement. And so I'm pushing. I'm like, this is not feeling right. And so I put my hand down to check myself, and I felt my son's feet.
Mm.
And so my husband's knocked out, and I'm screaming and I'm yelling. And at this time, we were in, if I'm not mistaken, we were in transition because we had just moved back from Maryland, and we came back to Greensboro, North Carolina. So we were at his mother's house at that time before we had moved into our apartment. Yeah. And so I'm screaming in the bathroom, and my father-in-law, he was like, hey, you get in there in the bathroom. So I'm like, hey, I called my husband Mac, that's his nickname, and I said, Mac, the baby's coming, and he's out of it. Like, that boy about cross-eyed. He's trying to figure out what's left from right.
Yeah.
Right, because it's so unexpected. And he was like, you just came into the bathroom. And so his mother came, and she's calling 911. He had me to try to squat a little to stand up, and he's like, that's his feet. His feet are right there. If I had the strength to, I probably could have labored him by myself. But again, that would have been a whole nother different story. But EMS got there in no time. EMT Dixon, she had helped me onto the bathroom floor, and she helped me deliver my son. So I delivered him in the bathroom on the floor. And so that was very, very much, it was painful. Even with him being so small, remember your body is still stretching. Your body is still, that's not used to that. That was our first birth. So it was a very painful experience, but they were able to get him delivered. She tried the CPR, and she knew she was just trying. She was fighting. And they wrapped him in a towel. They put him in my arms. They loaded us up and got us to the hospital. And on the way there, riding in the back of the hospital, the EMS truck, I thought that I saw him breathing. But what it was the vibrations from the truck shaking his body. And I started trying to hand him to the EMS. I'm like, he's breathing. Can you do something? And they were petting my arms and was like, baby, he's not here. And so that was hard.
Yeah.
That was hard. And so seeing that, because I was still fighting.
Yeah, you had hope. You had hope that your baby could live. Your baby could survive this. Baby that was strong enough to beat this.
Exactly. And I'm like, we made it this far. And I'm like, we're going to get to the hospital and something miraculous is going to happen. But the Lord decided otherwise. And when I say that, in spite of him not being here, there's a lot of growth that happened in my marriage that I have to be thankful for, the communication, the closeness, because a lot of people after child loss, they can't. There comes a lot of blaming, self-blame. If I would have ate this, if I would have did that, if you hadn't made me upset on this day, the stress probably, but that wasn't our outcome. And so because of our first son, and his name was Caden, because of Caden, we grew in our marriage.
Wow.
And so, that's why I say his life was not in vain. Was it a hard process? Is it still hard to think about and sometimes talk about? Yes. But there was still even victory in that first experience.
That's right. So you all lose your first baby. And I love that you made mention of that, because I think it's important. What would you say for the couple that's surviving that right now? Like, what would you recommend they do to feel closer to each other? What would you recommend they do to find some peace in the great loss? What would you recommend for the new parents who have just lost, about their relationship with each other?
It's counseling and therapy. Get plenty of it for both individually and as a couple. And be supportive. Sometimes there's nothing to say, but just to hold each other and be there in each other's presence. Not everybody has the same belief system, and I understand that. And sometimes we look more for scientific reasons. But understand that in life that there's some things that we just won't ever understand. But look at what remains. Sometimes you have to look at what remains. Are you stronger because of it? Are you more knowledgeable because of the experience? Are you able to help somebody else more because of the experience that you've been through? What remains? And so I'm a very optimistic person. So I'm always looking for something to grasp and hold on to. Very hopeful person. And I can say this too, the first night in the hospital, because I was admitted after my son passed, I just had this breakdown and I'm like, I can't feel him moving anymore. And my husband was laying on the couch that they supplied in the, because they sent me to ICU. And he came over and he laid in the bed with me and he just held me all night long. And I just cried. And he had his moments as well. And men understand that, men hurt too. Women, sometimes we can get, I carried the baby. You don't know what I felt. Men hurt too. They have expectation. They have hope that cannot be ignored. That cannot be ignored. You have to nurture and love on each other and give each other the space to be vulnerable. And, and if you don't have people, like my husband is expressive and when he gets comfortable enough, he doesn't like to say anything if he doesn't feel like his words are perfect. So he's quiet most of the time, but he likes to, when he can get his feelings together, his thought process together, then you will see him start to unfold. And so I had to give him the time and not be mad at him for not crying when I wasn't crying. Not being mad at him for not being mad at the doctors when I was mad at the doctors, because I felt whatever I was feeling at the time. Give yourself permission to feel what you need to feel. Go through the grieving process. Don't try to cut anything off. Take time to heal with one another. And, don't, try to rush back into life and doing things. And it's like when you get a car, everybody, it seemed like, got the same kind of car you have. Well, it's like when I started getting back, going back to work, everybody pregnant and everybody having baby showers and everybody doing this. And I mean, and it was hard. It was hard, but because I had that support system and I could have somebody to talk to, and I didn't, because you feel like a black sheep too. You can start feeling like, your loss is contagious. And a lot of people who haven't experienced it don't know what to say to you. And so, they're like, oh, I'm sorry. And, well, how do I go on with conversation from here? And I'm like, we can talk about other things. And if you're not comfortable, that's fine. And if you are, thank you. And I'm thankful that I had that, support. A lot of my Bennett sisters, oh my God, like the love was just overflowing and ridiculous. And I can't respond to people fast enough, so outside of my household and my immediate family, like my sister stepped up big time. It was ridiculous. So it's awesome to have that. But for those who don't, and you just have each other, look at what remains.
Yeah. And I think that is such a powerful message. Look at what remains, and that's really the whole point of this podcast, right? Is that like we're telling stories about hardship and stories about trauma. And at the end of that, people are more evolved human beings. They're stronger, right? They're more resolute. They're more determined. They're more, emboldened, to pursue things that maybe they didn't do before. And that's what the hardest days of our lives often teach us at the end of it, whatever remains. I also think it's important, that you mentioned just the tenderness with which you and your partner, your husband, allowed yourselves to be in that space of tenderness and to offer tenderness to each other. And I think it's so underrated. Like we don't talk enough about intimacy beyond like sex.
Right.
And just like being held or just crying together or just sitting in silence or just sitting in memory or in honor. Like that tenderness is so important and often not afforded to Black men.
Yeah.
And then I think a lot about like young people who might be listening to this, somebody who, the Gen Zers of the world, right, who might be experiencing this through like child loss in a similar way that you have, but also through like abortion, right?
Right.
what does that feel like when you lose a child in that way because a choice had to be made? And how
Right.
do you all support each other? So I just think that your message on looking at what remains tells the person that's going through this right now that, like, you don't have to focus on the hardest part of this. You can focus on what you grew and how you evolved as a result of this as well. So
Right.
yeah, that's really beautiful. And so that was the first loss,
Yes.
but you've suffered other great losses.
Yes.
So tell us, from the time that you lost your first baby, um, Caden,
Hmm.
what was the time frame before you decided to give it another shot, and how did you kind of move through that process when you and your husband decided you guys are ready again?
Well, it was I want to say about 2 years. I found myself pregnant. It seemed like 5 years straight. I couldn't do nothing. Like God, I missed every vacation. I wasn't getting no hot tubs, no nothing. I couldn't do
Oh
nothing,
yeah.
child. I was like, what in the world is going on here? But I found myself pregnant every 2 years, and
Okay.
so, but it wasn't something necessarily that was planned, but something our desire is to always be parents, and
Mhm.
so I'm like that never left. That
Mhm.
never left. Um, that nurturing part of us is just like we want some babies and
Mhm.
they go get here.
Right.
And so I had a friend of mine that told me about, and this is our second pregnancy, that told me about the liquid geritol, and it's a vitamin supplement that they say there's a baby in every bottle. Well, I'm not gonna give more credit to that than I would the good Lord Jesus. And they had more than one baby in that bottle because we were pregnant with twins.
Wow.
And it's funny how we found out because I went for an ultrasound and they did a vaginal ultrasound. And so instead of going on top topically, they have this long probe where they can enter into the cervix and get a better imaging of the uterus and the womb.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there and I didn't realize because I got big really fast,
Mhm.
really fast. And I'm thinking, man, I'm just eating more. I'm in a happy place. Just be happy. Those
Guys,
endorphins come.
twins. Spice the
Oh, I
pussy.
didn't know it was twins yet.
Oh,
At this point,
okay.
I didn't know. So the catcher is I fell asleep during the vaginal exam. When I tell you sis was tired, I was like, who does that? And so they brought us into the room, and I had my little sister Nene, Nyasha with me. And they two women came in the room all happy go lucky, and I'm like, what is going on here? So I'm bracing myself, and my little sister reached out, she held my hand, and she said, well, one of the first lady said, I'm a twin. I said, okay. And the other one, she said, I have a baby sister. I have two baby sisters that are twins. And I said, okay, I'm happy for you. Like, what is going on? And they knew my history. And so they wanted to make that moment special. And they handed me the ultrasound pictures and told me that I was pregnant with twins.
Wow.
So that was an awesome moment to have how they set that up. But I had no idea, no idea. And so because of my history, again, still with Women Hospital, and this is 2018. So there's still no diagnosis officially from the first pregnancy, just a pre-prom, which is an acronym that indicates or shows that there's a rupture in the membrane, the in the amniotic sac. And so we go forward in the pregnancy, everything is fine. Along with the genetic testing, we are able to see that we are having a boy and a girl. And
Wow.
so that was a blessing that we were not expecting on top of twins. And then I'm trying to figure out, well, where did this come from? Because I don't have any immediate twins, on my immediate side of the family. And to his knowledge, his family unit. But come to find out, we both have twins on both sides.
Wow.
But also with polycystic ovarian syndrome, what you'll see is um, sometimes you can release multiple eggs at one time.
Mm.
And so, and, I don't know if it was the Geritol, the PCOS. Again, I don't want to give more than it should be
The
given.
perfect storm.
You're right.
The
But
perfect
something
storm.
happened. Something happened. That day, something happened. And so he and so like I said, I was getting big real fast. And so I was having pain and pressure. And one of my mother's sisters, my mother's the baby of nine, 10 that are living. It was 10 that were born and 9 that are living. And my eldest aunt, I call her my auntie mama, because she stepped in when my husband had to work or my mother wasn't able to be there. She was my ride or die, my Aunt Betty Ann. And so she met me at the hospital, and I'm like, something isn't right. And so
How far along were you at this point?
18 weeks.
18 weeks on the second
18 weeks.
pregnancy. So
Yes.
what were you feeling though, like emotionally? So that you were here before, just 2 years prior with your first baby. What was going through your mind when at that 18-week mark with twins, you were feeling something was off again?
Well, I say this, I got overly religious when I found out that I was pregnant with twins. And it's so easy to do that in a sense that God's giving me double for my trouble, meaning that I lost one, he's giving me the two now because of the one that I lost before, and a boy and a girl on top of that. And so I'm like, so it's definitely, this is not going to happen again. This is, that was a whatever, for whatever reason the Lord had in place for that to happen, it happened. And like I said, I looked at what remained and kept it pushing. And so I wasn't in the mindset that we're about to have the same issue again. Right. But what I was thinking when I started feeling the pains and it was hard to walk, I'm like, get in and out of my car. I'm like, something is not right. And so
what did that feel like though? When you say something wasn't right, what were you feeling?
So it was a strong pressure in the bottom of my stomach. And just to be specific and grown, my vagina was hurting. Like there was a throbbing pain. Okay. And I did not have any contractions. I wasn't having any kind of contractions whatsoever. But I'm like, what is going on? I didn't feel any kind of fluid or anything happening. Just that heaviness at the bottom of my stomach. And I'm like, well, maybe one of the babies is positioned differently. And so with twins, the baby that's closest to the cervix is called baby A. And the ones further away then go up the alphabet. So baby A, my baby girl, her name was Daylin, and she was at the bottom. So her brother, Matthew, was sitting on top of her. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe she's just repositioning. Maybe they're doing something in there. And they were not identical. They were fraternal. So I had two different amniotic sacs. Okay. So she's down at the bottom, and I'm thinking maybe she's just turning around. But getting to that hospital, I'm like, I got to get some kind of help because this is not comfortable. And so when I got to the point where I couldn't walk is when I started to really get concerned, but I had enough strength. At the time I was living in High Point, North Carolina, in Women's Hospital. At this time was on Green Street, not Green Street, excuse me, Green Valley, in Greensboro, where now they have merged with the initial Moses Cone since, and that story behind that one too. So that they, that's the location I went to at the Women's Hospital. And I got there, I'm sitting down and I'm like, something isn't right. Something isn't right at all. And I'm like, okay. And so we get back, she's doing a vaginal exam. And that's one thing too, that they didn't want, or they don't want to do with a lot of women, is continuously doing vaginal exams, just because the mother feels uncomfortable, because opening the canal, it can introduce bacteria and infection, and you don't want that to happen. So in the process of her having to do the exam, my water broke. And so, but it was with Daylin, baby A, my baby that was closest to the cervix. Her membrane ruptured. And so they, she was doing the exam like you would if you were going to have a pap smear. They use the same little duck bill tool that a lot of us women are familiar with. And she was down there, and next thing you know, I hear her, and she flew back. I mean, it was just that much water gushing. And
Wow.
in that moment, my aunt stood up and she was like, "What just happened? What was that?" And I just broke down crying. I said, "It's happening again.
Mm.
It's happening again." And
So
I,
that trauma started coming back up for you again.
oh my gosh. But I thought that because of me being in the hospital and where I was, I'm like, okay, we're being proactive. They seen it happen with me before. We can do something different.
You were safe. You were safe
Exactly.
from what you didn't have the first time, the first go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So here I am still pulling in the air for hope. We're in a better place. So the doctors come in and they like, it looks like because we don't see anything else. We don't, understand. And so back to bed rest and just doing what I can. But this time they told me about keeping my stress levels down and my feet elevated. And so, which means in a transposed position. And so my head being low and my feet being high, which would help me gravity, helping the baby staying down and, the fluids and everything. But some doctors had different opinions um, as to whether or not that's effective or not.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as my husband learns something that could possibly help, he sticks to it. So, for example, in the hospital, they kept me overnight just to evaluate me and make sure I was okay. One of the doctors came in and put me in the transpose position. Another had came in after their rounds had ended and they switched shifts and another doctor came and was like, "Well, we don't feel like this is going to be very much useful and you being comfortable." So she put my legs down. As soon as she walked out, my husband put my legs back up because he's like, "No, it makes sense to us. We're gonna do whatever we can, and
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is."
Yeah, by any means necessary,
Yes,
and not have to go through this a second time.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so at this time, and it still wasn't even really a sure whose water or sac had ruptured as far as Dalen or Matthew. So I'm like, okay. So we doing the same thing, guzzling down fluids, trying to make sure that, the babies are urinating and doing whatever they can. However, at 21 weeks, April 2nd of 2018, I was pregnant. I mean, I was in labor with my baby girl. And so with this process, she was born. She was alive. She was alive. And I actually I've shared pictures of her, all my children actually, on my Facebook page when I was ready to release that and to help somebody else do the same process. But I have pictures of her and she kept crossing her legs. And it's amazing because even just at 5 months, at that 18 weeks, how active they are at that point, all they have to do is grow. All her physical features and everything was there. Everything was okay. And I'm like, well, what in the world? And I'm like, the doctors are looking. I'm like, this is a healthy baby. They not understanding what was going on or what could have caused that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there was no alerts with the genetic testing that there was anything, wrong with me. My husband didn't get tested for anything genetically to see if there was anything wrong with him. And I'm gonna stick a pin in that because that matters now.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm looking like, okay. And what they did was after she was delivered, they tied my umbilical cord to my son, um, and they stuck it back in my womb. So what that did was stop my laboring. So they were trying to save his life, although she had already been born. And
Okay. So
so
you essentially had twins who were actually born on 2 different days.
yes,
A lot of people ask, like, how are you a twin if you have like 2 different birthdays, or like people haven't really met that many twins who have been born with
mm-hmm.
such a large gap. But this is an example of you birthing twins and
Yep,
having those twins on 2 separate days. So that's
right. Right. And I tell you, I wouldn't wish it because both at this point, both of my deliveries have been vaginal. And
mm-hmm.
so you can imagine your bones separating, your body stretching, even though she was small, she was the smaller of the two. Um, you could fit her in the palm of your hand, but she was just a lady. Just she kept crossing her legs. It's like she wasn't comfortable unless she was swaddled up, and this it looked like a little handkerchief they had her wrapped in. And my favorite color is purple, so they wrapped her in purple, and I'm like, it's swallowing her. And I was laughing and giggling. My bishop was there, his wife, my family was there in support. And I was like, I don't know where she get that leg crosser from, because her mama's a tomboy. We ain't do we ain't do this. We ain't do this. But I mean, and even her godmother, my sister Mia, she got a picture of her smiling. I mean, literally, it's just there's so much life, so
Yeah.
much life. And even still, when my bishop was there, we were praying, actively praying. It ain't over until God says it's over. Different things can happen. So, in spite of her lugs not being fully formed, and again, she was born at 21 weeks on April 2nd. And her brother, my body had stopped contracting. It had stopped all that. Everything is going back to as if I was just carrying that one child. And so 2 days after I had her, she did pass about an hour or so after she lived. Had she held on longer, I think the situation or the dynamics might have changed as far as them fighting with her. But there is something.
You mean they're fighting with her?
Meaning doing measures to help her live.
You feel like they didn't try hard enough because she was so young?
Well, no, they said that because of her not being 24 weeks, a vital age, and her lungs not being fully developed, that if she were to pass on her own before a certain time period, they would just let her pass. Whereas if she would have kept breathing on her own, in spite of her lung capacity, that would have made the difference in them fighting with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so at this point, she couldn't breathe on her own.
She could not breathe on her own.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, but she held on in there for a little hour, and we were able to have her baptized before she passed, and so that was good. And I just that moment was, she was in her incubator. I was doped up out of my mind. I didn't have medications, and I had the greatest nurses, the absolute greatest nurses, that they just loved on me, and it's not common. And one of the nurses today, she has a huge platform, and I'm not name throwing, but this is just who she is. Her name is Jennifer Hamilton, and she has a huge platform on TikTok, and she is awesome. And then the other nurse, her name is Melissa Watkins, and they don't do anything for recognition, but I still keep in touch with them as best I can to today. They just genuinely care. When I cried, they cried. When my mother and mother-in-law went in to embrace me, they held me too. Like, it was real. It was absolutely.
What did you need in that moment that this community of women were able to provide for you?
I mean, they saw me and saw my pain, and it wasn't physical. It was the emotional pain. The expectation of what I wanted was no longer there. And so in that moment, they allowed me to be frail, to be angry, to be bitter, to cry, to scream, to be numb. They allowed that to happen.
And that's so important.
Yes.
So, especially for Black women, because we are not allowed to cry.
Yes.
We're not allowed to be angry. We're not allowed to be like, Black women are just not allowed to express without being penalized, not just by systems and by authority through these systems, but also by the people closest to us, right? And so it's oftentimes even more dangerous for Black women to fully express in her rawness when it's unpretty, and still be loved and loved well. Like, that is huge.
Huge. Yes. Both
So
of them being mothers. Yes, I mean, and it's crazy because so much is being revealed about how women are being treated. Oh, you're not in pain; you just want drugs. You're not really going through anything, and or they're not taking it seriously. And here you are. There was a movie that stood out that was so profound. It's called Breathe, and it was talking about women who were having issues with their body shutting down, and they're reaching out to the doctors and what is it? Had I not have thought about it, it would have been at the tip of my tongue. But preeclampsia,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
it. Preeclampsia, and I mean it's a silent killer,
Yeah.
and
High blood pressure while pregnant.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm like, you think that people are coming in, or all these stories that are coming out, people are testifying about their treatments in the delivery room. Nobody's advocating for them. But I can honestly say that I did not have that experience um, up until that point. And but I can say this, it causes me to back up some. I had a very bad gallbladder in my pregnancy with my twins. At 12 weeks pregnant, I had surgery to have my gallbladder removed.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. And then also prior to that, I want to say not long before that, because of my history, they were definitely, trying to make sure that everything was okay with my immune system. But so I had that stress on my body as well. Um, but I want to say that was probably the roughest experience that I had with those two pregnancies. Was
Surgery.
was the surgery while I was pregnant and with the gallbladder, and so that was it. That I mean, other than that, the support was awesome. It was there. They sent me back home, and I went to because I had steps at the apartment we were in, and so I stayed at my auntie mama's house, and they made room for us, and we have a large family, like a very large family, and they made room for us, and but as soon as I got home, like I was there for 2 days, um, and I Lord have mercy, I will say this too, that I failed to mention. I had a meltdown on my way out the hospital because we left out the front exit.
Mm.
And by doing so, one of the there's no indicator that you that anything has happened. They will, if you have a loss, they'll put a white rose. So if you go into the women's hospital and you see a white flower or something on the door with a ribbon or something, be mindful of that. That means potential loss.
Okay.
And so they're trying to have a quiet and peaceful atmosphere around that room in respects for the mother to give her some peace.
And is that what hospitals do generally, or is that just what the
That's
women?
what I observed in women's hospital. That's what I observed there.
That specific hospital.
Yes. I don't know
Okay.
if that's a common practice everywhere. That's just my experience and what I learned, and the respect that they have for the women there. That's what they'll do. And
Okay.
so they try to put you kind of away from things, because what can trigger you is like you can hear other women in other rooms, babies crying, and that can be emotionally draining and just trauma filled.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can't help it, they can't help it. But they do. I can admit they did try to put me in a place where I was away
Mm-hmm.
from that.
Yeah.
However, leaving the hospital, the receptionist ran up to us and like, "Do you need a, a baby carrier?" Yeah,
Okay.
car seat. And not knowing what had happened or had transpired, and I lost it. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely lost it. And so when I was able to deliver my son on 2 days later, he was born on the 4th, and he he was fat. He was fat. He was fat. And please, if I feel like I'm bouncing, please, have me to slow
No,
down.
I follow. I follow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because sometimes something will come into mind that I wasn't thinking of that could be important. But he was fat. He was sitting there with his arms literally up like this, like Fat Daddy was chilling. I could tell where all the food had went because he stole it from his sister. It is
Okay.
exactly what Fat Daddy was doing, and but he was calm, cool, and collected. Um, not fussing at all. He just liked being cuddled up and chilling, and that was my Fat Daddy right there.
Mhm.
And he too, he passed away. I want to say within the hour of living. He too was baptized before he transpired. And I'm like, okay, Lord, so giving birth, my body going through this pain all over again physically, my body going through this pain all over again emotionally and mentally, had the same team. And what they did was, and I did not know this, they made moldings of my baby's feet,
Wow.
and I have those to this day. And I didn't know, that they did this type of thing. So they give you a keepsake. You have how your baby's inches and their little bonnet or their little first diaper, and it looks like something you could put on a baby doll because they were so small. But I actually have the molding of my baby's feet, and I mean it's just absolutely beautiful what they did.
What do you think about when you look at those moldings?
I I sometimes I allow my imagination to run wild in
Hmm.
sense of where I'm like, what would we be doing right now? What do I think their personality would look like, or in this moment right now? And holidays coming, I'm like, I could see fat man just eating something. And here you go, Miss Prissy Press around here being the diva,
Yeah.
and I'm actually able to have those conversations with my mama. And she was like, yeah, I can imagine you now, you and all them children. She said, I'll be sitting there letting y'all stand on the front porch while I'm looking out the window.
I
Look,
love
all y'all coming over to my house, causing a mess, and thinking y'all gonna leave me here to clean it up. And so, the what have been can be just as exciting and joyful because we had the opportunity to experience them. They
it.
were here, they were real. No, even if it was for a short period of time, they were ours.
Yeah.
And so that is the joy that I find in that situation. Um, I have the best daughter, I have the best sons, and they were mine, they were ours. My first son looked just like his father. I'm like, oh, he would have got on my nerve. He would have got on my everlasting nerve. Look at
Hilarious.
my daddy. I understand so much more so now. While all the stuff that I went through to get you here, and
Yeah, it all makes sense.
right,
Those black proverbs.
yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah, that's my joy with that.
I think that that those two pregnancies, um, there's so much to learn in the life that was not lived
Mhm.
by these sweet precious babies that didn't get a chance to see it their lives lived all the way out. And my heart and like just strongest abundance of love goes out to you and your husband for navigating three losses. You know what I'm saying? That's three separate losses. Even with the twins, those were on two separate days,
Mhm.
days apart. And so what do you think about now when you think about all that your body has gone through?
I go back to my faith. Um, I was made for this. My purpose is bigger than my pain. And if I can just help one person, then I've done my job. Do I want to continue to lose? No, I don't. I want the desires of my heart. I want to be able to bring home a bouncing baby, healthy baby, home. I want to be able to enjoy moments where I'm harassing my child on TikTok from videos, and I want those moments. I want to be able to connect and bond. I want to watch my child grow. I want to see I want to see the Lord work through me, through my child.
Mhm.
And but I've also come to learn that too. Also, if it's not by birth, then adoption is always an option.
Mhm.
You know, there's more than one way to give love, and there's a lot of children out here that need it.
That's
And
right.
so, if I'm not physically able to, then that's definitely the next option.
Yeah. So you have some news.
I do. I
Would you
do.
like to share with our listeners?
Yes. Well, I am actually as of yesterday, 15 weeks pregnant. We
Woo!
are 15 weeks pregnant. Yes.
15
Yeah.
weeks pregnant. And how long since your last pregnancy with the
Our
twins?
last pregnancy was in 2020. We had a son
Right after
after the
the twins.
twins. Right.
So
Right. He
this
was born on February
third
12th. Our
pregnancy.
third pregnancy. Yeah. And I carried him the longest. Carried him to 36 weeks. What they did with him was I had a cervical cerclage. And so what that is a surgery. I want to say between 12 and 16 weeks. They will give you epidural,
Mhm.
and you have your cervix sewn together to help you be able to carry the pressures of the baby.
Mhm.
So at that point, after the twins, I was diagnosed with incompetent cervix, meaning
Mhm.
that I could not carry the pressure of the
That's
baby.
right. I forgot you did share that with me. Which even the language of that, when we think about how we label women's bodies, like in
Yeah.
actual science, an incompetent cervix.
Yes.
To call a woman's cervix incompetent.
Oh, that right there was painful. The one thing that we're built for to do that makes us stand apart from the world is bring life. And the fact that I was told that I wouldn't be able to, and I'm like, I've come through all these instances just for you to tell me that I won't be able to do what I want to do.
Right.
No, they don't sit well. They don't sit well at all. That is a big hit to your ego and your emotions, because now I'm looking at myself like, how do I continue legacy in a sense physically? Because immediately when you think of legacy, you think about your child. You think about, what are you leaving on this earth, and your pride and joy is your children because they carry on the torch. And
Mhm.
so that's what I look at. And so yeah, that was heavy. That was hard. That was hard. But I was able to carry our son up until 36 weeks. And it wasn't until this pregnancy that I experienced issues with diabetes and gestational diabetes.
The third pregnancy. What was your
Third
son's name?
pregnancy. Yes. And
What was
yes, so
the baby's name?
DJ.
DJ. Okay.
Yes. Yes. His name was Donald Jr. My husband's real name was Donald. He was going to be DJ.
Got it.
And he was huge. I had a cesarean section, and it was an emergency cesarean section because he wasn't responding to the stress test that they were giving him. Um,
Okay.
and so they had an emergency C-section with him. And when he was born, he wasn't crying. And the doctors just immediately started saying, "I'm so sorry, your son is sick." And I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, he's sick. Let's take care of this. Um, and they brought him over to see me. I kissed him, and I'm like, get my baby to NICU. You know, we got we
And
you
at
know
this point, are you just prepared for anything to happen, the worst that can happen at this point? Or what are you
I'm
thinking?
prepared to fight for his health.
Okay. So you're ready to
Him,
fight. You're
I'm
ready.
ready to fight. I'm a
Yeah.
fighter.
You
Yeah.
bringing this one home.
Yeah, I'm ready to, like, my church members, jokingly call me a holy thug, but because I went from street fighting to fighting in the spirit, but I
Yeah,
ain't
yeah.
forgot where I came from
Right.
now.
Right.
But I'm like, I try to be a lady about it these days.
Right.
But yeah, I was ready to fight for his health. I'm like, I let me get myself together, get myself up to NICU, do what you got to do, because the more he's not getting the health and treatment that he needs, the time is of the essence. So I had a sense of urgency. So they put me all back together again, because again, this is an emergency C-section. I get up to my room, and immediately because they want you to have time for the epidural to wear off. When I tell you that your will is strong in you, when you have something to fight for, your will is strong. I was already getting out of the bed as soon as they got me there to get in my wheelchair to go up to NICU.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was walking actually, and they made me sit down. And I'm like, okay. So I got up to NICU and he was there, and the doctors there were just like, I am so sorry. And I'm like, what are you apologizing for? I didn't understand the severity of which my son was suffering. And so I just seen him, and he's breathing fast. The machine is actually breathing for him. He's fat. He's close to 10 pounds. And so I do now believe that his health has something to do with my diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I say now
The
because
baby's health has something to do with your diabetes.
yes, I
Okay.
do believe. And I say that now because of more information that's coming out in this pregnancy that I'm experiencing. So he was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension.
Oh,
He's
wow.
yes, and so
Meaning that his heart was only working at a certain percentage.
right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
And then
And
again,
our Bennett sister talks a lot about that. Yvette, who I'm gonna bring in some of her words before we, a little bit later. But she talks about having that diagnosis and what that means as well. So I have a lot more context through following her journey. So that's good to
wow.
know. So yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for that to come out because I'm actually still looking for answers. Um, and sometimes you have doctors that, when it came to it, they were trying to explain to me what was wrong. On top of the pulmonary hypertension, he was having seizures, and he had bleeding on his brain.
Mm,
And, I didn't understand that what was going on. So they sedated him. And, and at this time, they had transferred him to Brenner's Hospital in Winston-Salem.
okay.
I had got immediately discharged so I can go be with my son. They have a wonderful, wonderful place called the McDonald's House where parents who are suffering disparities such as this can stay. They do not charge a fee, they only accept donations. They supply you with meals around the clock. You have transportations from the McDonald's house to the hospital and to and fro, so that you can be with your child. Um, my husband at the time is still working, dealing with jobs. The insurance ain't worth nothing.
Mm,
And that's another disparity too. You're trying to work, maternity leave is a joke. Your finances are suffering because of it. And then you have your family and friends who are trying to step in and fill in the gap so that you don't end up coming home homeless.
hmm
And so that right there is a whole nother journey within itself. But God is a keeper.
Yeah.
Amen to that. He is a keeper. But we get there for 3 days. They were trying to get him prepared to go to a machine called ECMO. And what that would have done was pretty much lived for him until his body and his organs and everything were in fit shape for him to start to be weaned off of the machine,
Okay.
off of the life support, in order for him to make it himself. But unfortunately, 3 days after he was born, he passed away.
Mm,
And so, yeah, it was very much devastating to have birthed him and to see him fighting, and um the little victories. They were like, well, we seeing that he's urinating, so his liver is functioning, his kidneys functioning, and but what I didn't realize is that they had stopped sedating him and he still wasn't moving,
mm,
and it didn't register at that point that he was not um, going to have a good quality of life,
mm.
um, because of the damage that had been done. I tried to, I had an autopsy done to see, what could be found out. Um, I asked the doctors; they was like, that's not something that they can diagnose in
Mhm.
utero while the baby's there. It's something that they discover upon the baby's delivery. And so, the doctors were there. They were comforting.
The hypertension, the pulmonary
Pulmonary
hypertension.
hypertension. I was told that that's not something you can diagnose in utero. Um,
Okay.
so
There was no way for you to have even found that out. Like this baby was just. And did they say anything about lifestyle or anything about anything that could possibly happen in utero that could have been prevented or
I
what?
asked that question. Prior to my pregnancy, I smoked cigarettes. I did. Prior to my pregnancy, I smoked cigarettes, and I'm like, was that, a factor? Was it something, atmosphere or environmental? Um, it got dangerous to the point where I was trying to find fault, or
We're looking for an answer,
I'm
right?
looking for an answer.
Yeah.
But depression is real.
Mhm.
And the doctor, he stopped me and he said, I'm not going to let you do this. He said, no. He said, that's not something that we can diagnose until the baby has been born. He said he had a heart issue and he fought. Your son fought. He was strong.
Mhm.
And so he was trying to reassure me in that moment, and care for my mental health and
Mhm.
emotion in that moment,
Yeah.
while still giving me the facts. Brenda's Hospital, awesome, awesome team. Dr. A, she was absolutely awesome. Um, that team, all of them, he won so many hearts. When I mean, you should have they couldn't, they had us go to a special room, and all the people that had worked with DJ couldn't fit in the room that wanted to be there to show support. That was amazing. That was an absolute blessing.
Yeah, I want to come to that because you mentioned something earlier. We said we're going to put a pin in it. What there are like, I did a lot of work with a couple of counties in California around this issue on Black infant and maternal health and mortality. And that was one of the things that just kept coming up, was that like there's this huge disconnect between care providers and people who are receiving care, Black birthing women who are receiving care.
Mm-hmm.
And so even just to hear all the different junctures that you've experienced, like quality care, especially given what you all were facing,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say somebody who's listening to this right now, who's a physician, or maybe there's a mother who doesn't really know how to talk to her doctor or her caretaking team, what would you say is the best kind of, like, how should physicians approach moms who are pregnant, but also and expecting, but also specifically how should they approach parents who are experiencing hard pregnancies or grave loss?
Um, they should. It's sad to say this, but my last pregnancy with my son DJ, my worst experience was with a Black doctor,
Mm,
a woman at that. I first encountered her when I had my cervical cerclage put in, and when you have, I didn't have Medicare, Medicaid at that time, but I did with my first two pregnancies, pregnancy, Medicare, Medicaid,
mhm,
and so you don't know who your team is, but when you get better insurance, you pretty much you get a team of doctors that work for the same practice. And so, at that time, my second pregnancy and my third pregnancy, I had better jobs and was able to afford better insurance and care. However, I got the same team.
mhm,
Um, and so I encountered the same doctor twice. And pretty much they're all qualified to deliver your child once it's time to come. Whomever's available, they have permission to, because they're part of that team. But I encountered her first doing my cervical cerclage, and I was telling them that because they want you to stay until the epidural has run off. You getting up and you're walking around and you're safe to go home.
mhm,
And so that's what they tell you, and that's what I believe. And so she came into the room after the cervical cerclage because I guess I was taking longer than they had anticipated.
mhm,
And she burst into the room and she was like, this didn't introduce herself. Her demeanor, she was clapping her hands and she was talking, and we know that that's attitude, that's aggression. There's no, that's not what we about to do. So
why was she approaching you like that?
I believe when you take up time in their hospitals and in their beds, because they don't keep women like they used to.
Mhm,
You can have a baby, and one day if you feel like you're okay and the doctor feel like you're okay, you can go home.
mhm,
Whereas I remember at one point, you were in the hospital for at least a week, making sure that the baby adjusted, your body was okay, you didn't have any issues that could catch postpartum depression. But now it's anywhere from a day to 2 or 3 days that you're in the hospital. So
mhm,
now, mind you, this is just a outpatient. It was outpatient procedure, but I believe I was taking longer than they had anticipated. But she came into the room, and the nurse followed behind her. Mrs. Hemingway, this is an outpatient procedure. We got to make sure you get up and get home. And my mother was in the room with me, and my face doesn't have an inside voice, so it got towed up real quick. And so my advice is advocate for yourself. And I said, I am not leaving this hospital if I cannot walk. I don't care what your policy is. I'm not going to put myself and my child in a position to hurt myself and my child.
Right.
So we didn't hit it off good at all in the first place. So I'm like, and I try to be compassionate, having my experience from health, and I understand that medical field can be overwhelming. I understand it 100%. I've been a caregiver for over 12 years and a manager of a memory care unit for less than a year. I understand what that looks like. And so dealing with doctors in and out. So my compassion was there, but then my fight was there as mama bear. This is what we're not going to do.
Right.
So, and not caring who's around or who's in the room. I'm not here for you. I'm here for my child. And so knowing my history and having access to that, I don't care if you take a glimpse. This is a woman that could possibly have some emotional triggers. And if you don't have the emotional sensibility to some bedside manner, doctors have some bedside manner. This is a serious situation. And, I'm not sitting up here trying to get a free meal because hospital food ain't what it used to be. I'm not you don't even serve what I want anymore. I like the ravioli. Y'all don't even have it on the menu no more.
Right.
I'm not trying to be here.
Right.
Like, for real.
So what does bedside manner look like? Does it look like, so what I hear a lot of people say is people don't even ask for their consent when they're doing things, right? To the mom or to the baby. So asking for consent at every step of the way, right? My sister said when she was laboring with my niece, and this was when the whole county shut down, so her birthing plan was completely thwarted because of COVID at the time. And so she gave birth the same day that the county shut down. So there was already a lot of stress at the actual hospitals because it was like, oh my gosh, right? And she was saying that people were very short with her, but that she didn't have the energy to fight for herself, right, while she was laboring. And so thinking about, maybe for medical physicians taking that moment to pause a little longer, right, and check your own energy before you start engaging with patients, and just kind of thinking about the patients deserve that time, right? What else would you say are like some really important things for a physician to consider, to think about when they're caring for somebody who is a birthing mother?
To listen to what they're saying. Listen to what they're saying. And in the sense that my second, and it goes direct into my second encounter, I was actually arguing with the same doctor before my son's emergency C-section. I was scheduled that day, that morning, to have my cervical cerclage removed. And she was saying there's nothing wrong, everything's okay. I don't even have a place to take you to have it removed. I'm like, we're in the hospital. Make that make sense. So I'm arguing with you. She got so mad, she ran out the room and slammed the door. And it got we about forgot we were saved in there, chat.
It sounds like she liked the professionalism to even give you.
Yeah, I didn't even want her back in my room. And unfortunately, and she came back in, and no apology, but just, well, we don't see nothing wrong. And I'm blessed because my first lady is a director of nursing with Moses Cone healthcare systems. So I had her knowledge and her backup and support to call on. You never know who people know. So don't get too high and mighty and think so much of yourself, and your job might be on the very line. It didn't come to that with her, that particular doctor. But I did have somebody knowledgeable. You cannot force me to do what I don't want to do. I have rights as a patient. But remember, listen to people. And so if I'm telling you I want my cerclage, You have no reason not to. This is my plan. Now, and also if you have a health plan, like you were saying with your sister, my thing is I can't afford to deviate from routine because I feel like everything that we set in place is going to ensure that my child is going to get here healthy. So
Right.
if I can't, if we got I'm sticking to it. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, or you're doing what you're supposed to do. This is the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like that in my life. I look at patterns. I'm a creature of habit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I go to work, I'm gonna get paid. If I don't, I'm not. If I put in, I'm gonna get something out. So that's my mindset, and I need for us to be on the same page. And we're sitting there arguing, and next you know, this doctor comes in and he said, we have to go to the emergency room right now. They start stripping my clothes off, wiping me down with these antibacterial wipes. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at her. You're telling me that nothing is wrong, and yet my son is not responding to stress, and I have to go in the emergency C-section. Now, I'm so pissed off at this point that I don't even want her touching me or near me
Mm-hmm.
at all. Because if this is how you come, and how are you going to handle my child?
Mm-hmm.
The doctor is then made aware of what's going on between she and I. He's pleading to me, we have to get your baby out. She's the only person here that can help me. I'm like, God, you. So we fast forward, and I'm getting discharged. She's ready for me to go because I start asking her about, is there something I can do? Can I stay there with my son? She said, I'm sorry, I don't know nothing about Brenner's Hospital. Like, she literally told me that. You know nothing about Brenner's Hospital. Are you when I got there, I'm like, how is it that you don't know anything about Brenner's Hospital? If I'm lying, Lord, strike me dead now. She told me she knew nothing that could possibly help me at all. No, so
And so she was actively working against you.
yes, she
Yeah.
was. Yes, she was. But I'm blessed to have a covering. Social workers came up and spoke with me, our conditions. I come to find out I was sick. So I was discharged without any antibiotic or any medication or any kind of care how to for the cesarean section site whatsoever. I was just discharged to go and be with my son. Right.
Wow.
So I'm like, and it's
And
because
even that could have caused all kinds of post cesarean complications that
oh,
could
it
have
did.
killed you.
It did. It absolutely did. I knew I was sick, but I was not going to check myself in until my son was seen about, until I was satisfied with where he was. It wasn't until 3 days later when my son had passed that I checked myself into the hospital there at Brenner's, and I had a uterine infection. Now my skin is very dark, but my stomach was so red from the infection. You could see it in my flesh.
Ooh.
That's how bad the infection was. So I'm sitting here like, okay, Lord, not only am I about, my son going on in transition to glory, but I'm about to be up out of here too. So I'm admitted for 3 days in the hospital there, on severe antibiotics. And I mean, it was absolutely dreadful. So I have the emotion of my son passing, this issue now I'm dealing with my body, the argument that I had with that doctor. Advocate for yourself. And so that anger started to sit in, and I can be transparent with this, that had my son been born sooner, I feel, even if the Lord still decided to take him, I still possibly could have had more time with my son had we followed the plan. And I don't feel like that's misplaced anger or hurt. I don't feel like that at all. But I also feel like even still, what if he would have had more time and would have caught that period or deadline where he could have been eligible for ECMO? But you want to sit here and argue with me. How do I not know that stress in that moment caused him to turn for the worse? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's why it's important to, have people are now record everything. Record everything. Have your ducks lined up. And that's one thing my mother has always taught me. You have a witness, but if you are true to your word, your integrity, your character, I promise you everything is going to fall into place. But it's because of her that I decided that I love the other doctors and everybody that I dealt with. But because of that particular experience with her, I left that care in that practice because I did not want to ever encounter her again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really powerful to even hear you say that. And you're one of so many women in general, but especially women of color and especially Black women
Yeah.
who have to do yoga, right? And origami
Mhm.
their way into quality care. And so it's like it sounds like you've experienced the range of like really good care and also just really, really poor and desperate care too.
Yeah.
Then it leaves the parent in a vulnerable position, right? Because
Yes.
like he begged you to let her help him, even
Yeah.
though you didn't feel safe with her
Mhm.
emotionally, physically, psychologically. And so that's an important note. So did you ever think about filing a complaint against her?
I know I went on there and wrote a review. I don't know if anybody's seen it. I haven't looked back at it. Um, and then I got so involved with some other things outside of life, in the sense that I can't legally I can't speak with so much on it. But there was a dispute in the workplace at the time of the pregnancy, um, that came down to a complaint, and it lasted for a couple of years. Um,
Okay.
and but victory is beautiful.
Yeah.
I can say that, but it got legal because of the discrimination I faced because of my pregnancy.
Wow.
And so I got so overwhelmed, but I did go and I wrote a review. And exactly what I said. I'll be okay with my son passing, but I cannot forgive immediately, or I have learned to forgive since then.
Yeah.
Um, I get passionate about it because it wasn't right,
Mm-hmm.
but I have learned to forgive a little bit more. Am I all the way there? No.
Yeah.
I can admit that the Lord is working with me, because you can't deal with people with unforgiveness in your heart and expect forgiveness in return. So He's working with me on
Yeah.
that.
So it
And so,
sounds like advocate for yourself first and
yes,
foremost. It also sounds like having somebody there with you. And I
yes,
know that that is a privilege and not a lot of birthing individuals experience. But if you can, whether it's a partner, a close friend,
hmm,
a relative, or having somebody in there that could do the speaking for you when you don't have your own words, your
yeah,
pastor, your minister. So that sounds like that's another point of support just for folks
yes,
listening. So advocating for yourself, having somebody with you, recording everything, right?
yes,
And you can let the physician know, hey, do you mind if I record this for my own record? Right.
right,
And so that gives them the pause. First of all, it lets them know, it signals that you are serious about your own health.
right,
Secondly, it gives them pause to think about what they're going to say because they know they're being recorded. Uh,
right,
and based on how people respond to that is really important, because if you get a physician that's like very short or irritated or upset that you're taking your care into your own hands, then you know right away you need
right.
care, right?
Big red flag.
This is not it's a big red flag. But if the person's like, oh yeah, I don't mind, or like this is fine, or if they have their own personal thing against being recorded, you can ask them to tap somebody else who is qualified to speak on the feedback that you're going to get and have
Exactly.
to do that. So this is really about covering your bases to make sure
Yes.
that in a system that's already designed to make sure that we are not thriving and well, that like we are doing the things that we need to do to cover our own bases. And for folks who don't have anybody, consider looking up local nonprofits that support folks. So you can type
Yes.
up nonprofits that support pregnant women. You can type
Yes.
up where to get extra prenatal support, and just see what comes
Right.
up in your neighborhood or your community, and you can find somebody who can offer that support, or communities that can offer that level of support. So I just want to make sure that I emphasize this piece.
Yes.
It's so important, and you're one of so many Bennett Bells that I've talked to, other women that I've talked to, who have experienced some version of what you are describing. And so it's important that we take the opportunity to let people know how that, first and foremost, that it's important to advocate for yourself and be
Mm-hmm.
serious about it and relentless about it, but also to give you the tools that you need to navigate what that looks like, because when you're advocating for care, usually it's an uphill battle. So
Right.
there's a few things that you can do. Does that capture that?
Yes, it does tremendously. Tremendously.
So you're in this. So two things I want to talk about before I let you go. The first is um, before we talk about your pregnancy now, I want you to talk about how you were able to pay your baby's lives forward, because we've talked a lot about what that meant pre-pandemic, you know, when you left
Mhm.
the hospital with no baby but your body is still producing, right? Can you
Yeah.
talk to us about, and to moms who might be experiencing this, what is that like? How did you choose to pay your baby's memory forward, and just share a little bit about your journey with that?
Well, it wasn't until my second pregnancy with my twins that I learned about donating breast milk. The power of breast milk is just amazing in what it could do. I had no idea how much of a demand breast milk was. And I'm like, well, I have it. I was sitting over here asking doctors to give me pills to help dry up my support. My supply, but it's not FDA approved. And some women, I guess they could get it. Some weren't able to, but I was one that wasn't able to. In my pain and resentment, I went to old remedies of frozen cabbage to help. They say if you freeze cabbage leaves and you put it on your breast, it'll help absorb the breast milk and it'll go away. But I'm like, somebody needs help. And so, and God opened up some big doors. And so I started pumping on my own. Because my breast, I don't know if it was because I was pregnant with twins and my body knew that I would need that supply, or if it knew I would need to help babies. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started pumping, and I started donating my breast milk. And so one of the hospitals told me about an organization that you could send your breast milk to. They would filter it down and they would give it to babies in the hospital. And I was okay with that. But however, once I realized after they did all this filtration, I could pump a huge tote full of milk and there will only be a little bit left. And I'm like, all that work that you put into it, you value every drop.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, what else is out there for milk donations? And so I found a website on Facebook called Milk for Babies, and the four is a number. So Milk for Babies on Facebook,
Okay.
and Milk for Human Babies or Milk for Babies. I haven't been on there in so long. But I'm pretty sure you can find it. And what you'll find is there are mothers who are putting in requests for women in their communities who have overstock or overshare or oversupply of breast milk. There are children who are on G tube feeders or bolus feeding who can't eat solid foods, and mothers depend on breast milk in order to make sure that this children is getting nutrients that they need. I had no idea. Women who can't supply as much as they need for their children. Or for whatever reason, if they're on medications, if they're just some women, can't breastfeed for whatever reason. And so I was like, I want to help some children out here. And there's babies being thrown on all kinds of formula and all these things going on right here. I said, I want to help, and how could I keep my babies alive? So we ended up pumping for a couple of months, and I was able to help 10 babies in the triad, and it was absolutely just the most rewarding feeling ever.
Wow.
I went to WIC office, and I didn't think it would happen, but because of what I was trying to do, they supplied me a pump that they normally only give to mothers that are breastfeeding
Mm-hmm.
with children. But I was given a pump there when I left because the nurses that I've had the first pregnancy I still had up until that point, which was amazing. I don't know how that worked out, but it did.
Wow.
One of them helped me get a starter pump just to get me home and get me going because she knew what I was going to do. And this is with my twins. And so we were able to help 10 babies in the triad that way, meeting mothers from Winston, Charlotte, High Point, traveling. I put my efforts out there online for people to see. I had, again, the community, mailing things, the bags for the milk, storage bags, reusable breast pads, and and disposable breast pads and things of that nature in order to accomplish this. So it wasn't just me; it was the community that helped us feed and care for 10 babies in the triad, and that was that was such a blessing. I didn't hit a wall until my son, because he was born February 12th. And by the time I had got home, March had hit, and then here comes COVID.
The pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like,
February 2020.
Yeah. So I'm like, nobody knew what this was. And here I am with a trunk full of, I mean, not trunk, but a deep freezer full of breast milk. And I'm like, I don't feel safe giving this to any mother, because I don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is. And when I tell you I cried because there's a bond between the mother and breast milk.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I could use it either for myself, for skincare, making soap. I didn't know all the properties. I just knew that babies drank it and needed it, and it was gold.
Yeah.
And but I disposed of all the milk, and I stopped pumping, and because of COVID. But had it not been, I would have done the exact same thing over and over again.
Yeah. And what we know now, right, is that I think that I was reading somewhere that it's really not that traceable, like COVID with breast milk. And so like a lot of parents, I know at the time, like the CDC, they were like, it's fine for you to breastfeed your baby. Everybody was wondering about that, even with mothers and their own children,
Right.
And so I think that just you talking about how you turn that pain into purpose is so, so powerful to hear how you were able, you didn't have your own babies, but you were able to provide a lifeline to 10 other babies through this line that your babies gifted you with. And I think there's something really beautiful and poetic about that, even in the loss, and something that we can all learn, when we experience that kind of grief. So thank you for sharing that. And so the other thing I want to ask you is, how are you treating this pregnancy different? You have a baby coming. We are like, I'm just like rooting for you, and praying for you, and so excited for you, and also a little nervous for you. And like, so I just want all the best things to happen for you in this pregnancy. And it sounds like you've learned more since being pregnant before. So how are you approaching this pregnancy differently?
I am now in New Jersey. And when I tell you it's been a journey, it has been an absolute journey. And we only got here in March, and now it's December. Wow. So it has been a lot happening. But this pregnancy was not planned at all. Because of the PCOS and the trouble I was having with losing weight, I had decided to get myself and my body prepared for gastric sleeve surgery. And the weight that I was losing in the process, my husband got me. He got me. It's his fault.
Good girl.
He got me. So I'm like, Lord, have mercy. So I'm sitting here, we're pregnant, and I'm like, Lord, we're up here. We haven't even been a year. Was family not here? It's just how's this gonna work out? But I have an awesome team. Wasn't able to get my records transferred 100%. And so women, I want to include that if you can now, while you have the opportunity, have your medical files on backup somewhere for whatever reason. Because be it transferred, they might not have the same computer system. For me, I had over 4,000 pages worth of stuff on my pregnancies alone. So you could just imagine, right? And even with sending it electronically, there's been issues. So, get a backup. I want to put that, get a backup. Even if you're not pregnant, have your medical files on hand somewhere. So if somebody needs them and requests them, you have them on point. So with that being said, I told them what I could. I gave them what I had. I showed them what I could. So I have a specialist several specialists that I see. I have an endocrinologist that helps me. Like I'm a type 2 diabetic now. I haven't been tested for gestational diabetes, but I am on insulin. They are helping me regulate my blood sugars. And I'm learning what I can and can't eat. I thought that Raisin Bran Crunch was okay. No, it's not.
I'm glad they told you, baby. Raisin bread is probably the biggest lie of our generation. So
I
yeah,
found out the hard way. Like my
yeah,
blood sugar dropped below 50. I ate some cereal thinking I was going to be all right, it's healthy or whatever. My blood sugar went close to 300, you
yeah.
know, at peak. And I'm like, that's not it. So I'm learning. I also had more genetic testing done. The difference this time is that they were able to find where I had something called beta 2. It's something where the antibodies inside of my blood would treat my children or my babies as if they were um, bad for me.
Yeah, it's
They
like
were
autoimmune.
invaders. Yes. So
Yeah.
it's called beta 2. And
Wow.
I don't know why that test wasn't done prior because I was able to get genetic testing done early to find out, so happened to find out that my twins were born a girl, but they were looking for other things. But I don't, if I think back, that's the only genetic testing that I've had done. I don't
So
know
how do
what
they
made
treat
them
that?
do this. I'm sorry.
How do they treat that?
So I take Lovenox. It's a blood thinner. So it's an injection that I give myself twice a day, in the morning and at night,
Wow.
to help to keep the blood from clotting.
What's
I
that
guess
called?
Lovenox.
Lovenox. Okay.
Mhm. So that's what I'm taking now. Some women they give. My sister, she was told to take aspirin once a day.
Okay.
I'm also next week I'll start what they call progesterone suppositories. It's a vaginal suppository that you enter into your cervix. That helps strengthen your cervix and get medicine into your body to help you carry longer. I did omit that my last pregnancy with my son DJ, I was getting weekly shots. They
Okay.
feel as though the suppositories are stronger than the progesterone shots.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
it's okay. So it's a hormonal
Yes.
injection. Okay.
Yes.
To help
So
that
they are
hormone.
on top of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I have my endocrinologist. I have my specialist that I have already had my cervical supplies put in as of December 14th.
Okay.
This month, and so that's just a couple of weeks ago. I'm up and moving. That's just an in and out process. Probably you out for 2 days,
Hmm.
if that. And this pregnancy, he's growing. He's healthy. Oh Lord, I done told what.
You're having another boy.
Well, the cat out of the bag now. So much for me being suspicious,
Yes.
Oh
Oh,
Lord.
sweet.
Yeah, I got a king on the way. And so I'm like, well, Lord, okay. The family knows. They just found out Christmas. We've actually known for a long time now what the sex was. So, but yeah, so we're having a boy, and we're excited. We're absolutely excited. So now I'm just keeping my weight under control for the first trimester. I'm now in my second trimester, but my first trimester I did not gain or lose any weight.
Okay.
And so I stayed at every time I went in, like literally it was the same weight. So I'm trying to watch that because they have decided that they feel like the diabetes from my last son's pregnancy could have possibly contributed to his demise. So I'm definitely trying to be more, proactive about that, watching everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have a continuous glucose monitor, and so it pops up on my phone. If my sugars drop really low, if my sugar goes really high, I can watch what I'm eating at that time and what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Walking every chance I get. I work third shift as customer service rep, so I'm sitting down, but I get to walk around the building
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and just taking it easy and getting a chance to enjoy in this new atmosphere, in this new start, in this new beginning. And so
Yes.
I am still very much still hopeful, happy. I'm starting now to feel him flutter around and move around in there. And so the joys of that is exciting. And the personality, I think he's going to be a fat one as well because I feel a little something every time I eat. So
Okay.
I think the joys of food, we might have that in common.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are absolutely excited and we're due in June. We're doing
Okay.
Yes.
So we are going to send you all the good energy and the best nutrients and all the most love and all the most joy and excitement as you carry this baby through June. That's going. So is there a plan to have you on bed rest or anything during your third trimester, or how are you all preparing for like labor and delivery?
The doctors have already expressed that they want to do a cesarean.
Okay.
However, if I can, because that recovery was horrible, in the sense of the pain. I do have some
Vaginal birth.
Yeah, no, I actually had an emergency cesarean with
The
my
last
last son.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and so that recovery was hard on my body. Lord have mercy. So if I can avoid that, if my baby is healthy, I never, because I didn't have any issues with delivering. That was never an issue. It's just carrying full term.
Yeah.
And maybe they see something I don't, but if I'm going to definitely fight for a natural birth. If I can have that, I don't want to go through that stress on my body again. I do not.
Yeah. Do you have a doula? Have you thought about getting a doula?
I've thought about that, and I want to have somebody there that can help and keep us prepared and possibly knowledgeable of things that I'm not in tune with or see something, because that's their expertise. So I'm definitely thinking about that, but I haven't. It's different up here. It is different up here in this area. So I'm trying to navigate that. When should I, infer about that? Is it something that insurance covers? Is it something that's going to have to come out of pocket? Because the cost of living is different these days.
No, for sure. And just so people know, like, to have a doula is somebody who is a specialist. Every doula I know is a woman. I'm sure you can be a doula and be a male as well, but she's somebody who supports the mother during the pregnancy and postnatal experience as well. So you have a doula who, might support the mother through the birthing process and get the mother prepared to labor, but the doula might also support the mother postpartum and maybe do stuff around the house or take on the baby or massage the mother. So your doula is really a part of your birthing team, and she is the extra support who really stands in as the voice and the advocate for the mother when she can't speak, and has a little more expertise than, say, like the partner who the doula is there to also support, right? Because you have more of that scientific expertise. So thinking about that, it's still pretty new as a discipline, and so what we're seeing now is a lot of specialists and doulas popping up across the country. And I was telling you, I worked with that organization, with a couple of organizations, counties in California, around this Black Infant Health Initiative that we have here in California. And it's going to be a growing conversation around how insurance is looking at doula support and what's, like, all the questions that you're asking. Those are all like still very new questions that different counties and insurance companies and medical practitioners are all kind of grappling with, because it's still pretty new. But for Black women, it is actually studied that having a doula actually improves your outcomes as you're preparing for birth and birthing. So it's something to think about for sure. There is obviously a cost for those who are listening, so you'd have to definitely look in your community to see what kinds of resources exist for parents who are preparing children with doulas.
Yes, most definitely. I know I have been already researching 24-hour daycare, simply because now I work third shift, and that is not something that I've seen in my area. Back home, yes, there's third shift daycare, but here, no. And so I'm looking at changing my whole lifestyle, but it'll be worth it when he gets here, and just adapting.
Yeah. And one last thing, what would you say to the person that's like, why does she keep putting her body through this? Like, why doesn't she just let it go? What would you say to that person? Because I know there's a lot of parents out there who you are not the only person, right? And actually, Gabrielle Union talks a lot about this.
Yes.
Her experience and thinking she was broken or something was wrong with her. And then maybe like, why don't you just give it up? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. What do you say to people that have that attitude or that mindset about what you should do with your body?
Key words is your body. It is your body. If now I am not a health advisor or professional, and so I'm not going to tell you to put yourself in a position where your health is literally on the line, and it could take you up out of here, and you know it willingly. I Their adoption is always an option, because you are important and you matter too, and you being here to help groom and nurture that life, it matters. So I, have counseling, get the therapy that you need in order for your mindset, your mental set to be prepared for that, but also having a support system to help you through that process. But my desire is to be a mother, and if I can't do it naturally, then I will adopt. And I've been offered opportunities. Women have, offered to be a surrogate for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a blessing as well. But um, you have to listen to your heart and and trust it. I mean, just absolutely, you have to know yourself. Know what you can and what you cannot handle. Because childbirth by itself, even just one, even if you do have a child, is not for the faint of heart. It is not for the faint of heart at all. There's a lot of glorified looks that are going around, on TikTok, where everybody's taking pictures with matching outfits and all this going. There's more to motherhood than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so just understand it's not a fashion or a fade, it's a lifestyle and a life choice, first and foremost. But it is your body. If you desire to be a parent and that's how you want to do it, through childbirth, if you've experienced loss, find support groups. I'm a part of a support group on Facebook called Stories of Babies Born Still, but it's the acronym divided by a period. Stories of Babies Born Still. Women of all ages, all years of experience who have suffered loss. We come together and we can, celebrate each other's children and new life and
Mm-hmm.
rainbow babies. Here's my rainbow baby on the way.
Yeah.
But somebody who can give you the atmosphere in order to, one, be okay with moving on after loss. You
Yeah.
don't have to stay in that place of hurt. And if you're given the opportunity to bring another child in, like I said, look at what remains. All of those are building blocks that I have used in order for me to move forward.
Right.
If I'm given the opportunity to do it again, it must be a reason or a purpose behind it. I'm not playing Russian roulette or anything, but I'm living my life. It's a desire that me and my husband have. Our faith is leading us there. And being that this was not planned at all, I mean, we were actually doing everything to prevent this from happening. Protection and and everything, birth control and everything, and we still got pregnant. So if that's your desire, just make sure you have the right people in your ear, and don't have yes men in your ear just because they think it's cute.
Mm-hmm.
As well, because again, your health is on the line, and another person's life could possibly be at stake. But it's your body.
Thank you for that. And so the last thing I'll ask you before I let you go is, you have your rainbow baby on the way.
Mm-hmm.
Your rainbow baby has had 4 siblings ahead of him in this lifetime, 2 brothers and a sister. What will you tell your son of his siblings?
That he he had siblings before him. I don't believe in trying to dress up things too much, because we get things misconstrued very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in the sense that you got you can mix folklore with religion, and it turns into a mess. So when he's able to understand, you know, things of that nature, we say things to comfort us, like we have our own guardian angels. And I don't want to offend anybody when I say things of that nature. I just, my belief system, and my doctrine, and what I'm under, what I believe, or my conclusions I've come to, just getting to a point where he understands or starts seeing other children and asking about brothers and sisters and things of that nature, or put it in a place where he can understand at his level.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is not something that I'm going to force upon him. But when life begins to question, I would definitely let him know that you had a sister, and some brothers before you, and three brothers before you, and what happened. They went on to glory before they could get here, and my true belief is that they waiting on us. We just have to do what we have to do to get there. So to see them, so that is my belief, and so that's what I want to pass on to my son when he's able to understand that.
I love that. I love that. And I did just see the I took a second to look up the acronym that I'll share, but Stories of Baby Born Still is a Facebook group on it's a group on Facebook, and the acronym is SOBS.
Sobs, yes.
Yep, SOBS. So I love that. I thank you so much for sharing so much of your story, of your journey, with us today. I think initially going into this interview, I was like, oh, it'll be about an hour. And then I was like, no, but like, these are not stories that you can just cut off in an hour because you want to cut it off and keep a time frame and keep people's attention. Like, this is a story that, like, if it's for you, you will listen to every minute of it. And so why cut that short when there are people who actually need these stories? And so I'm really grateful that you made the time to share. I know for a fact it's going to have an incredible impact on so many women who have been exactly where you are sitting right now, and change a lot of people's lives. I think you've given some tactical tools that people can look into. You've given your personal anecdotes. And I think that that's really important for us to all learn from and grow from. So thank you for sharing. And then the other piece is, like, we're women now, and like, when I think of a lot of my Bennett sisters, I think about who we were. Like, my memory takes us to that point in time,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Yes.
But there's so much journey in everybody's story after that moment. Like, that was really
Yes.
the earliest part of who we were. That was the
Yes.
earliest part of our adulthood. We're all very different now. And
Yes.
I don't think that, like, I feel like the next iteration of what we call ACES was like a weekly program twice a week that, like, all Bennett students had to go to, called Academic Cultural Enrichment Series, where you learn about how to carry yourself in the world, or you learn from different thought leaders or
Mm-hmm.
folks on campus, or whatever they felt like the mission was that we needed to learn at the time. And what I hope, the next kind of iteration of that in this modern age is an ACES that includes more stories from Bells and who we've become after we left Bennett. Because to me, I think that's where the merging of generations can happen more effectively between the
Yeah.
students that are still there and who we are as Black women in the world after Bennett. Like, having more tools and more stories and more examples
Yes.
of that is like priceless. It's
Right.
actually priceless.
And having access to the alumni. I remember that dinner that we had when the alumni came, and we were able to mingle with whom was able to come. And I mean, women of all ages and classes. And that was such an honor to be able to help and serve. And I hate that I did not take advantage of the opportunity to keep in touch. I
Yeah.
didn't understand the importance of that connection, and I hate that I failed to do that. And we have our brother college, Morehouse and Pen Pals and things that they initiated for us to start. But the alumni is something I hope to see more of when it comes to Bennett, and more sisters reaching out. Even going to speaking to the students at the early college, I had the opportunity of doing that. It's so close, but it's so far away. So I'm with you with that one. I appreciate it more so now. And there's some women who can tell by the way we carry ourselves. It's so true. It's not just the pearls that we wear. And what's I saying? We not sedated. We know we're pretty, but it takes a bell to do it well. Like, they can tell. Girl, yes. So and I love that. I absolutely love that. And so there's some things with it I could go on and on about. That's a whole nother different conversation, because I came up in my churches that I've attended, with some Bennett alum, and there's a standard There is a standard. There's nothing like a Benny Bill. No? I just, it did it, period.
Yeah,
So,
no, I think it's just I'm just always in awe by who we are in the world,
mm-hmm.
and the resilience that we have. It really is like a micro shot of the Black woman's struggle and her journey and her
Yeah.
accomplishment. I feel like Bennett and Spelman colleges are like a quick snapshot of
Yeah.
like Black woman's experience in the country, you know,
Right.
and a little bit of an incubator, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Obviously, like we're a little more incubated than, you know, a lot of the Black girls who didn't get the opportunity to go to these schools, but the challenges are very similar, you know,
Right.
pretty much the same. So I love you. Is there anything else you want to say to our listeners before we log off? Anything you
Just
want to leave people with?
be true to yourself at all times. You know, keep it 100 with yourself. Don't fake the funk. Love yourself. Mental health is important. Get counseling. Stay in touch with your therapist, even on the good days. Journal. You know, do that. You know, so you can go back and reflect and look. But you matter. You are important. You are bigger than the pain in the situation. And if you're still here, there's purpose. There's somebody who needs to be able to grow from what you are experiencing. I'm learning that life is not just about me at all. That's why we have people here to help one another. So every day that we can be here, help.
Yes, I say and I say.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for you, because honey, I tell you, I love what you're doing. I'm so proud of you, and I'm and in the sense of the barriers that you're breaking and being authentic to who you are and not faking the funk or forgetting where you come from.
Yeah.
And I mean your story along the way, and just know that you are being prayed for on so many levels. Your family is being prayed for, tracking your journey, and you know it's just that's another conversation within itself, because I'm a big activist on a lot of things, and something has got to change. And I believe when we have whistleblowers and people who are not afraid to go against the grain is when we're going to get results. And it's crazy how political this world is. But the systematic injustice has to stop. It has to stop. And I'm so thankful for educated women such as yourself who demand the room and the respect, and give women like me who are still yet reaching certain heights and plateaus, and even going beyond the glass ceilings that you have broken. Thank you for what you have done and what you are doing for people to be heard and getting stories across, because not everybody has that gift or anointing to be able to do that. And so my prayer for you is that wherever your name reaches, that you go even further. That you go even further. And so that is my prayer for you, and that wisdom falls upon you. People around you are sincere about your endeavors, and that you trust and relationship is there, and trueness and sincerity. And I just pray that for you, and that you have all the resources that you need in order to get what you need done. And then the overflow, where you can just rest in the peace of it and enjoy yourself in the process.
Come on, enjoyment.
Really? Yes, honey. Yes. I'm like,
I really appreciate that. Every single word is exactly what was meant for me to hear. So I do appreciate it. And I appreciate the support. And you know, definitely we're gonna talk about my brother's stuff at some point. But that'll be for a future episode when he's out and he can tell his own story.
yes.
But yeah, I wholly appreciate the trust factor, the enjoyment factor, the resources factor. Like, thank you so much.
Ma'am.
This is EPEC Conversations.